2018 is over and 2019 is just beginning. This month on BNEWS In Depth, we're going to talk to two people who can give us some insight of what to expect in Burlington in the upcoming year. First up is Town Accountant and incoming Town Administrator Paul Sagarino. And following that interview, we'll be talking to Planning Director Kristin Kassner about different projects happening in town. Should be an interesting look at the year ahead. Stay with us. Hi, I'm now joined by current Town Accountant and future Town Administrator Paul Sagarino. Paul, thanks for joining us and
thanks for having me, Rich. Appreciate it.
We wanted you here pretty much just to talk about the year to come. And as I mentioned, introducing you, one of the big things is that there's a transition in leadership. You're going to be the new Town Administrator. We have a new Town Accountant. Just talk about how that process is going right now.
Sure. We started the process very early to try to find a replacement. In addition to being the Town Accountant, I also have served as the Assistant Town Administrator for the past several years. So it was sort of a joint job posting. We had a pretty thoughtful search committee, and we did a lot of getting the position out there and putting it out in many relevant areas where we could attract the best possible candidates. One of the things about this position is that it's been very difficult to fill throughout the state. There's not a lot of qualified applicants out there. So we were very fortunate to find a perfect fit for the job. The man's name is John Denizio. He's a Woburn native, previously worked for the city of Woburn, as well as he's worked in school districts in Winchester, Arlington most recently. So he's one of the best people out there, and I was really thrilled that we were able to attract him to the position.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it would help having him have experience in both town side and school side.
Yeah, that's obviously going to be a big help to us. And again, there's really a shortfall of candidates out there, and we're really fortunate to have snagged him. I would consider him one of the top potential replacements. So I feel like we got one of the top people that we could have attracted to the position, and we were very fortunate. The Ways and Means Committee provided us with some funding in a reserve fund transfer so that we could transition the position so that he started in Thanksgiving, around Thanksgiving, so he'll have some time to overlap with me while I'm overlapping with John prior to his leaving. Yeah. So we're really fortunate. A lot of places you get a couple days with the previous person, so there's not a lot of information transfer. So we'll have a couple of months to sort of transition together into our new roles, and John into his new role in retirement. So
right. And how are you feeling with kind of getting the ropes ready or get everything set for your transition as to Town Administrator?
Yeah, everything's going well. John and previously to that Bob Mercier always did a great job of keeping me involved in things. So if I wasn't always involved, in the front, I was always in the background working on projects that the town was undertaking. So I feel like I've been very fortunate to have had two bosses like that were willing to share their knowledge with me and allow me to be a part of a lot of things, even if they weren't strictly related to the town accountant's position, just so that I could get exposure and learn different facets of municipal government.
Excellent. And just so people who maybe don't really know you or John, what are some of the things that you're similar to John Petrin, and how are you different?
I think in working with people, John's a real likable guy. I like to think that easygoing personality. I feel like I'm easy to talk to. John was. I feel like open door policy, very approachable by both residents and department heads. So those are the kind of things where I think that we're very similar on.
And can you get through a speech without a joke? Because I know John Petrin can't.
I can probably get throughout a speech without a bad joke, because that's not one of John's specialties. He makes a lot of jokes, and he thinks that they're hilarious. So we always joke him. The joke is that his jokes aren't funny. So that's sort of the joke that we have with him. He's good at missing on jokes.
Yes.
But that's part of the fun.
Yeah, it is. And just being, in your current position as town accountant, just talk about, where the town is right now as far as its finances. How are we doing as far as, stabilization and free cash, the bond rating? Kind of catch people up as to where we are currently.
So the most recent year, fiscal 2018, ended on June 30th, and I would say we had a very strong year financially. We're able to close out the fiscal year with $11.6 million in free cash, which is a pretty good number for the town. Stabilization fund balance at that time is approximately $8.8 million, which is also really good for a town our size. We've been putting money towards our OPEB liability. June 30, 18, that was about $6.6 million in that fund. A lot of towns haven't gotten started setting money aside for that, so we're a little bit ahead of the curve there. Still have a long way to go, obviously. And probably what I think the most compelling thing is the town's excess taxing capacity is up to about $11.5 million. Those are additional tax dollars that we could access on an annual basis without a Proposition 2.5 override. So I think on one hand, it's a good buffer for us if the economy sort of takes a turn for the worse and we need to rely on tax dollars more. But at the same time, I think it shows a lot of restraint on from all of our elected and appointed bodies in the town administration in being very wise in terms of how much of the tax dollars we tack on every year. So I think we really focus on that. So I think fiscal year 2018 was pretty successful. We still have the AAA bond rating, which is higher than the federal government. So we have better credit than the United States, and it's definitely a positive. So.
Burlington's not shut down right now, so we should have a better bond rating than the federal government. A couple of things that I want to circle back to, just because maybe people aren't familiar with the lingo or whatever, but that $11.5 million, basically there's a cap of how much the levy can go up each year, right? And then Burlington is not getting near that. It's staying well below where it could.
Yep, our ability to tax is outpacing the actual taxing that we're doing. Right. So with some of the new developments that have come on board, we're not utilizing all the additional taxes that have been generated. We could tax more, I guess, is the way to put it, which is obviously something we really focus very hard on, using that judiciously.
Right.
But it is a good reserve for us in the event that we have an emergency or the economy goes south, and we have the ability to raise revenue to continue to meet the budget to sort of get us through a difficult time.
Right. Because some towns, they're at their limit, and then they need to do a 2.5 override proposition.
Most towns are at their limit.
If something big comes up, for example.
If you look at it, most towns are at their limit. So when they're setting their budget, it's as simple as that. How much is 2.5% on top of last year's taxes, plus anything new that was built within the community? They can capture some of that revenue as well. So.
And the tax rate for FY19 was set last month or the month before. Talk about where Burlington is, how we compare to surrounding communities.
Okay, it's a very sensitive topic. We prepare a lot of information along those lines to compare ourselves to our neighbors, and within this region, really the only two places that are as affordable when it comes to property taxes are Woburn and Billerica. We're much lower than all our neighbors, and if you add in the fact that we don't charge many fees for trash or activities at the school, it really is one of the cheapest places around to live in this part of the region, Northwest Boston. We're very proud of that. We'd like to maintain Burlington as an affordable place, and believe me, I know that any tax increases are difficult for some of our residents, and that's something that we take very seriously as we're building the budget, that your tax bill on your kitchen table is the one you're concerned about. So the fact that you would pay twice as much in taxes in Reading as you do in Burlington doesn't really matter if you can't afford your tax increase on your bill. So it's something we're very cognizant of as we're preparing the budget.
Right. And that's why also the town has the split rate to have the commercial side help the residential.
We're extremely fortunate with the commercial shift, with the amount of commercial property in the town. We're able to shift some of that burden onto the commercial tax base and reduce the burden on the residents, and that's a system that has worked great in Burlington over the years. And
one of the other things that you mentioned in passing
that I want to just get a little bit more on is the OPEB fund. Just talk about why it's important. I mean, it's somewhat controversial among some town meeting members. Pretty much every time it gets brought up, general consensus seems to be it's a prudent thing to do. So talk about where we are and why it's important to put money into that fund.
OPEB's kind of an interesting concept that sort of came about when some companies in the private sector went out of business and they had a lot of promises that they had made to their employees as to what they would provide them. So it's similar to if you were buying a house and you took a mortgage and then you had to put that same amount of mortgage in a bank account to pay that mortgage. So it's kind of an interesting concept, and it's an accounting thing, but it basically, they're asking us to do is set aside funds for our retirees' future health benefits, essentially. So it's not required to be funded at this point under any regulations. It's suggested that you start funding it. So the actuaries go through and calculate an estimated liability for us as of today based upon all our current employees, what they may receive in future benefits, as well as all our retirees. They try to put a number on it, and we try to set aside some money for that for the future. It sits in a trust fund, it's growing, and the goal is at some point that the trust fund is large enough that the earnings on the trust fund are eligible to be used to pay down those benefits in the future.
Right.
What they're trying to prevent is future tax revenues and future budgetary money to pay for this. We want to make sure we start saving for that now, because there's a potential there for taxes to go up in the future for benefits.
Very good. So it's just trying to have a nest egg or a security for the future.
No, that's a great way to put it. And like I say, I think we have a funding plan. We fund a portion of it in our budget based upon the actuarial schedules. We should satisfy that obligation in about 30 years. I know it seems like a long time, but if you consider the history of the town, that's really a blip on the radar screen. So we'll continue to monitor that, make adjustments to it. And again, I feel like we're doing a good job in a sense that we're not required to fund this yet. So a lot of communities have been unwilling or unable to start setting some of that money aside. So we feel pretty good that we're able to at least start setting some money aside at this point.
Great. All right, so now we've kind of got ourselves caught up to where we are today. Now we'll look ahead a little bit. One of the things that's always a topic of conversation is attracting new businesses. Is there a way that the town, that you envision kind of working to get new businesses? Are there certain types like tech or medical that we're, hoping to attract?
Well, one of the main reasons behind bringing Millipore to town was that we felt as though that was a company that we were missing in town, that type of company, a life sciences type company. We have great tech companies, we have a lot of different industries covered, but we were sort of deficient in that area, and part of the whole deal to attract them to Burlington was that they would generate additional companies that wanted to be near them. We sort of feel as though that's been successful. I know that in speaking to someone at Millipore recently, they had anticipated possibly once a week bringing someone to Burlington to their lab to display something, and that would sort of be the showcase for the town. Hey, look where we are, and we have got great restaurants here. But in speaking to someone from Millipore, they actually had over 300 clients from the entire world visit Burlington to visit their lab, and also at the same time, get to take a look at Burlington and say, hey, this might be a good place for us to relocate. So we really feel as though it's been successful in that regard. It's a different type of company than we've had in town. So we feel like that's started to work out well, and hopefully that'll pay benefits to us in the future by attracting similar type companies.
Right. Yeah. You make the pitch to get the first one, and then the others come following once they kind of see what.
Yeah, they look around and they see how inexpensive it is compared to Kendall Square and places like that.
Yes.
And again, Millipore is a worldwide entity, so they're bringing in not just other companies from the United States, they're coming from all over the world here. So it's really kind of a big deal.
And, one of the things that always gets brought up, of course, is more companies coming in, more workers coming in, more traffic coming in. Are there things that the town is looking at as far as, the congestion, the roadways, public transportation?
Yep, the town's involved in a regional initiative, both with Middlesex 3, and a lot of that initiative revolves around bringing workers to Burlington at off hours. One of the problems we're experiencing is the restaurants have difficulty attracting workers because they have no way to get home after the restaurant closes. So we're working on a joint grant with the state to provide a nighttime shuttle to provide workers from Lowell to Burlington and back. So in terms of that, we're looking at, we're also looking at transportation regionally with Lexington and Bedford, just to sort of see if there's any way we can sort of line up our beeline routes with their local transportation routes to see if there's any synergies there that we can sort of work together to provide a better loop throughout the region and potentially keep some cars off the road. But I can tell you this, just from, I live a couple towns away, and traffic's a regional problem. So it's kind of limited as to what we can do as one community. It really is. There's traffic everywhere. And in the community I live in, I would say that we have similarly bad traffic, but none of the benefits of the economic development. So we have the traffic here, and I know it's definitely a pain for the residents. But at least we are receiving some of the benefits of that traffic here, where most of the other communities along 128, they just have the traffic. So,
right, people coming to Burlington, shop at the mall.
Exactly.
On the town side, any capital projects that are kind of being looked at, areas that need improvement, possible things that we might see at the Maytown meeting?
We're pretty well in the thick of a couple of major projects right now, as you know, with the fire station 2, and we're in the infancy stages of the public works garage rebuild. So we're really going to have our hands full with that. I don't anticipate. I know we need a police station. That's something that's probably not in the nearest future as people would like, but it definitely has to be in the near future. That'll probably be probably the last, I would say, substandard facility, on the town side. That we really need to bring that up to snuff. But no plans for that in May at this point.
Sorry, Chief Kent, if you're watching.
Chief Kent reminds me every day of the need of a police station. So we take it very seriously, but what I like to tell folks is we can afford to do all of these things. We just can't afford to do them all today. And again, I'll get back to the same analogy. 10 years in the history of the town of Burlington is a blip in the radar. So we're hopeful that the town will be here for another 500 years, and that's how we need to view things is, we need to sort of layer things in so that they're affordable, yet that we're still investing in the community. So 100 years from now, people will have to start replacing these buildings. So. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So some of the projects that have been approved. The senior center is done. Yep. I was just there earlier today, gearing up for the return of bingo, which I think some people will be excited to hear about. Where are we as far as, you said infancy stages, but what are we looking at as far as the DPW and rec buildings? Yep, we received it's a two-phase project. So the first phase of it is on the Clockard Reed site. Right. And the second phase, which hasn't been approved by town meeting, is the highway barn itself. I think we're at a stage where we have the project almost to design standards. We've been working as a group with the engineers and architects to sort of lay out what we need and what's the most efficient way to do it. As a group, we went on a field trip recently and viewed some recently completed public works facilities in other communities. And that's really eye-opening when you get to see what a modern facility looks like versus what we're using right now, and you can sort of see the benefits to that type of facility. To the average person on the street, they may think, DPW barn, what the heck, there's nothing going on in there. It doesn't matter if it's falling down. But when you see the efficiencies that are built in and the way that the expensive equipment that we have is protected.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have a lot of stuff outside now. So
you leave $400,000 sewer Vector trucks outside to the elements. It's not a great thing. So there's a lot of benefits to it, and it's very, very well needed. I mean, those are two deplorable facilities, the Public Works Highway Garage and the Recreation Maintenance Facility. So we'll be able to take care of both of those with phase 1, and then phase 2 will be the water and the highway end of it. But, you know, when you see it in person, just to sort of see what other communities are working with, it really shines a light on how important those facilities are and how substandard the ones we have are.
And if anyone's interested, we did a whole in-depth, you know, on those facilities with a lot of images of what they currently look like, so people can go and look and see what we're talking about. You know, if they
and you know, I'll just point out that what we're building here, these are basic, nothing fancy facilities. They're just going to bring us into the modern times.
Right.
So I know everything nowadays is expensive, but we're not trying to build fancy Taj Mahal type buildings. We're just trying to build very workable Spartan type facilities that sort of meet the needs of the town, you know, for the next 40, 50 years.
Right. And you mentioned Fire Station 2, which we did an update on recently. I think it's going to open June, July, or should be ready by then for ribbon cutting.
That's the plan. From what I understand, it's on target and it's on schedule, and you can see that one with your own eyes as you drive by it. So it looks like there's a ton of work going on down there, and
yeah, kind of looked like it went up pretty quickly, and so it was good.
It did. From all indications are that it's going really well, and I think that one's important in that the size of that one will allow us, if the needs of the town change in the future, we'll be able to move a piece of equipment from Central Fire Station down to there if that's where the needs are. So we have the flexibility. At the previous site, there was no possibility of moving the aerial ladder down there or anything like that. So we're really proud to be able to do that, and you know, there's been a lot of growth on that side of Burlington, you know, over the past 20 years. So
yes, Chief Yetman said that that's the main reason. You know, they're getting a lot more, you know, they're almost getting as many calls on that side as they are on the residential side over here. One of the other big projects, or that half of it was approved and the other half will be coming up, is the MWRA connection. Maybe just catch people up a little bit on why it's important and where we are.
Well, obviously it's most important so we can have clean drinking water to drink and shower with. But we're very fortunate to have received the support of the town. I know that we did a lot of outreach to the public and explaining what was going on with our wells. The first phase of that project, which is will allow us to sort of recoup the 1 million gallons a day that we lost with the wells that we shut down, would be the connection on Adams Street to Lexington. We're in the process of going through the environmental review processes and all the state agencies that I had never heard of that are involved in this thing. So it's been a great learning experience, and it's well underway, and we're hopeful to be able to start building that connection between us and Lexington that will provide us at least with the 1 million gallons that we had lost at the Vinebrook treatment plant.
Right.
And that'll give us a little bit of breathing room for the next phase of it, which is to sort of tie directly into the MWRA system. And what that would do is allow us to have the ability to serve the town's needs well into the future. We're going to plan on keeping the Mill Pond plant as long as it's feasible.
Right.
So we'll have multiple sources of water. We'll have redundancy, which is really important in the system, where if MWRA has a problem, we'll still be able to produce our own water. Or if we need to shut down the Mill Pond plant to clean it, we can get all our water from the MWRA. We can pick which water is cheaper at that time. Right. So it'll give us a lot of flexibility when it comes to water, and that's the long-term goal. You know, once we satisfy the immediate needs of the 1 million gallons a day that the Adams Street connection will provide.
Yeah, because people have to realize that Vinebrook has got some issues that in the future might not be something that's really surmountable. Yeah,
and one of the things we worry about is, okay, so we have a problem with a chemical now. What's the next chemical that might come down the line, down there? So we could retrofit the plant, but then if something new comes along, we'll have to add on to that plant. So it might be a never-ending problem. So we're hopeful that by latching onto a nice, clean water supply from the MWRA, again, once we get the main hookup in with the line from Burlington to Arlington, we'll be able to satisfy any of the town's water needs well into the future.
Yes. And it is a good supply. I don't know if anyone out there has been to the Quabbin Reservoir out in Central Mass.
It's beautiful.
I grew up in that area. I'd hike it a lot, and it's a very nice area.
It's
so.
delicious water.
Yeah,
too.
you look at it and you just get thirsty.
It really is. It's pristine out there. They have the ability to produce. They have the ability to withstand 4 years straight of drought without missing a beat.
Right.
So that really is a pristine water source, and it's. I don't want to say unlimited because no resource is unlimited,
sure.
but for the amount of water that gets used out of there versus what they can produce it's really is quite a bit of water available.
Yes.
So
that's mostly the questions I had. Anything that we haven't touched upon that you see as far as things coming down the pipeline that people might be interested to know?
We're getting ready to start building my first budget anyway, which will be the fiscal year 2020 budget. So we're in the process of that, and one of the positions we will be looking for is an economic development director. I think the town has been, this is not an original idea to me, it's been talked about for many years within the town, and one of the things that we've been very fortunate to get by without such a position over the years. But we're in competition with our neighbors along 128. We're in competition for businesses. And like I say, we've done extremely well considering we don't have anybody sort of cultivating that. But what we hear from the business community is they want certainty and they want to be able to make a decision, and it sort of has to happen quick. And one of the ways, the problems with our system in town government, it's really not a fast system.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of independent boards that a company has to go through, and then they go through the planning board process, and then they get out of there and say, oh, you need to go to the ZBA for your sign. So,
right. Board of Health if it's a restaurant.
Board of
or
Health,
anything
yeah,
with
there's a
food
lot of steps to the process. And aside from the typical, sort of recruiting aspects of trying to attract businesses to the town, we would hope that this position would be sort of like a quarterback and be able to give a company one point of contact to say, you want to come to Burlington? We want you to come to Burlington. This is all the steps that we're going to need to take to get there, and get there as quickly as you need to, because that definitely is the overriding concern, that companies don't want to deal with the uncertainty of going through a process and finding out they're not approved, or just having a process that drags on too long. They're moving at a much quicker pace than that, and we're talking to people that want to be up and running in 6 to 9 months, as opposed to something that's maybe a different concept may take much longer than that to go through a process. So we've recognized that, and I think we're hopeful that to be able to convince town meeting and the town that's an important position for us going forward.
Right. I mean, and the sooner they open, the sooner start taxing them. So
no, absolutely.
helps the town as well. So this would be somebody who would say, help navigate the different boards and departments.
Hopefully someone who's able to ascertain whether there's any problems with the type of business, or whether any special permits, or whether there are any objections to various aspects of the business that might need to be worked out, whether or not the business will fit at all within our town. We just feel as though because we're so decentralized, it will be really helpful to someone to have a face and a contact to say, all right, this is my person that I'm dealing with. They can sort of disseminate and work with the boards and stuff to determine what the company needs to do to actually get here, and hopefully make it for a quicker and smoother process.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that. So we're wrapping up. Can put you on the spot real quick. Just any New Year's message to our viewers, as we, this will be for the launching in January. Anything you want to say to the people of Burlington?
No, I just want to say thank you for them putting their faith in me as the next town administrator. I'm going to work really hard for the community and do the best I can. It really is a very special and unique place, both financially, but more importantly, the people that I run into in town are great. I mean, we just have a great group of people. within the community, and I've worked in several, and I have to say that this is really one of the most I feel like it's the best community in the state. So I truly feel that. My wife and children get upset with me at the supper table when I say we're doing this, we're doing that, and they'll start yelling at me saying, "What are you saying we for? You don't live there." But that's how I feel. I feel like I'm a part of the town, and I'm happy to be a part of the town. So I'm looking forward to an exciting first year on the job.
Well, good luck and Happy New Year, and thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me.
So there you have a look at what may be coming down the pipeline in 2019 from Paul Sagarino, the man who will be running this town as the new town administrator. We're going to switch up now and go to Planning Director Kristin Kassner to talk about upcoming projects, what we might see as far as new businesses, and where the town is in its master plan process.
And welcome back. I'm now joined by Planning Director Kristin Kassner. Kristin, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, first off, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And just, as a observer of Burlington town government, I have to make the estimation that your department is going to be one of the busiest in town because there's always so much going on. Just to talk about, what's a typical day in the planning department? What comes in? What do you have to do? What are you keeping in mind as, a day goes on?
There probably isn't a typical day in the planning
Sure.
department. I'm sure you can say that for a lot of departments in town. There's typical process that we have in place, but everything's different and really kind of comes through. But in Burlington, the department in general first is we do long-range planning, we do permitting. We're involved in a lot of other committee work with streets, sidewalks, transportation. We work with conservation closely for environmental protection and other areas like that. Because Burlington's been so dynamic over the last many, many years, we end up getting very, very involved in permitting, and most of our time, unlike a lot of communities, is spent with applicants, going through the process of meeting with applicants if they have an idea, thinking about the idea, how it matches with zoning, kind of what are the goals of the town, and it's kind of where the master plan comes in, kind of how is the master plan speaking to kind of what their project is it right for the location, what are some suggestions that we would make and or the planning board would want to see going through the process, and then they would submit a site plan, and we have an interdepartmental review, which goes to police, fire, conservation, Board of Health, building, and the Board of Selectmen for comment prior to the opening of the hearing, which is unique to Burlington. We also have an interdepartmental meeting with for development projects, the development coordination committee. Which is wonderful, just to really get everybody in the same room, talk about what any concerns are. We bring the applicants in. Development coordination meeting, sorry. Anyway, and that's been fantastic. And Josh Morris, our senior planner in our department, really leads the day-to-day permitting aspects, as well. Liz and Jen are integral parts in everyone's integral part in the workings of our department, being such a small department. But Josh is really leading the day-to-day permitting process, which we are very busy. Many of you, hopefully many of your viewers watch our meetings. I'm surprised, actually. Well, I'm encouraged how many people I run into that watch our meetings.
Oh yeah, they do. If there's ever an issue with the stream, we get phone calls right away. So people are turning in.
Anyway, so we do have a lot of permitting activity. As you recently, we had the Burlington Mall major redevelopment.
Right.
We've permitted a handful of restaurants that should be beginning development with Eddie V's, where Macaroni Grill was. The Yard House is taking over the Chili's site. Some other projects that are also under review right now is the Porsche dealership at Herb Chambers. Porsche Audi is looking to have a separate Porsche dealership.
To split the two.
Yep, and which had gone to town meeting. And then there are just a handful of other projects. The urgent care at the corner of Terry and Cambridge Street, where the Gulf Station currently sits. We'll be locating there. So I think you're going to see a lot of activity over the next year. A lot of kind of that retail restaurant kind of mostly under construction, and a big change to the mall moving forward. So it, along with the mall, we have an application for Long's Jewelers to move over to the mall site, which is going to be an interesting piece. And they're not looking to locate inside the mall, but actually have a separate freestanding building that we hope to continue to articulate a lot of the walking paths and really break up the fact of like that, you know, they look from the sky, it's the major mall building and just a sea of parking, and just really breaking that up into kind of more of a pedestrian network, and that you can actually walk around and you don't feel like you're just walking around a parking lot. So.
Right. Yeah, so we'll drill down in some of the specific projects in a minute. But what I'm hearing is that, you know, people who watch the planning board meetings, they probably see that there's a lot of, you know, feedback from planning board members, a lot of, you know, negotiating certain details. But what I'm hearing is that there's a lot, even before they get to that point with your department, that already kind of, you know, works out certain ideas.
One of the major things we do in our department is facilitation, and facilitation between town groups, applicants, residents, and just really try to understand the different dynamics at work before projects get there, to anticipate anything, to really voice, you know, needs of an area that, you know, maybe there's an opportunity here. I mean, I can talk more about that for some other projects that have come forward. But, you know, I think we over the years have, in the town in general, and I think a lot of the department heads have been fantastic, but I think the coordination between departments and the ability to kind of bring the right people in to have that conversation and bring things forward successfully has been huge, especially, I mean, public-private partnerships, to be able to leverage private funds, state funds, and potentially some town funds, but in some cases not even town funds, to really get a lot of projects off the ground for infrastructure projects, especially.
Right, so you work with, you know, the different businesses that are looking to come in, and you say, all right, well, you can set up this thing here, but we'd like your help with this project. Or I think there was like renovations on Middlesex Turnpike for Millipore, if I'm correct.
Right, so both Northwest Park and the Millipore site, as well as the Keurig site, triggered
That's right.
a lot of improvements for Middlesex Turnpike and as well as Northwest Park and some of the roadways in Northwest Park, all the way from Market Basket, the Middlesex Commons, all the way pretty much to you know, Lexington to Bedford, the whole way down. You could actually walk on a sidewalk now,
Yes.
the whole way down. I haven't held the parade yet, but I'm going to. But that was coordination between the private entities and mostly the Mass Works program through the state, which has been fantastic and a great program that was initiated out of the Patrick administration. Initially, if any of you recall, the initial work on Middlesex Turnpike was the 2010 Recovery and Reinvestment Act money that Obama said, just if you have a project and you're ready,
Right.
here you go. And so, you know,
Stimulate
we
the
saw a lot of
economy.
highways being repaved, but we were lucky to get some of those funds to be directed toward some of the initial work along 3rd and 4th Ave. So that was good. But we couldn't have done it without, one, you know, a major company coming into town and being successful to attract that company, as well as work with our private developers all together to go to the state to say that this is ready, we're interested, we have these companies. It's going to be an economic boom if we can get this infrastructure going. So,
Now you mentioned that you would talk with companies and say, oh, you know, we're trying to fill a need in this part of town, or, you know, maybe this would work here. Are there any times where somebody comes to the department and you just sort of look at them and like, listen, I understand what you're trying to do, but I foresee that this will be difficult to get through the planning board? Are there times where you kind of dissuade them, you know, like this might not be a perfect fit here in Burlington?
yes, had meetings this week already on this project. But no, a lot of the projects, the most common of those type of projects are the already built sites in town that historically had been older industrial sites, that maybe you had 3 or 4 employees, and you have an older building and you want to reoccupy it with, you know, a nail salon and a sub shop and these kind of more a dentist off, really more intense uses.
Right.
And the site just can't accommodate it. So you just come to this, you don't want to see a site built and unused, but you can't overburden the streets and neighborhood just because you're allowing something that's not going to fit on the site. So those are the most challenging sites, because you want to make every property as viable as it can be, but if it's viable to the detriment of the neighborhood, you kind of have to make a tough call. So it's really trying to figure out, okay, you have this building, what are some uses that aren't as intensive that we can be thinking about,
Right.
and try to encourage people down that path. So.
And then I'm guessing sometimes, just certain bylaws just get in the way of certain ideas.
Oh,
that
if the
people
regulations say no, it's no. So,
Right.
yeah.
We saw that with the medical marijuana site. It was just too close to a park kind of thing. It was hard to find a spot. So that didn't end up working out. Are there certain types of businesses that you think Burlington should be trying to attract?
I think yes. I mean, I think that what we're seeing is a major change in the type of businesses that just exist right now,
Sure.
As well as the way people work. So the traditional office building that worked super successfully in 1995 is becoming obsolete now. I mean, you don't really have the sea of cubicles in a traditional office building now. You see, these mixed spaces, mixed laboratory spaces, and I'll talk a little bit later about the life science amendment that we're proposing for January. But the way people work and the way spaces are used, and the increase in medical office type spaces, and just so much is happening and that's different, that has somewhat different space needs. And it's not you need to tear everything down. You just really need to be thinking about how are buildings being used, what are their needs, what are the air quality and other types of needs that people within the buildings, and water quality, and what's happening in those buildings, that we need to make sure the infrastructure around those buildings and the spaces within the buildings can work and can be retrofitted, and that the regulations allow for that retrofit, to allow for the diversity of different types of workspaces within our existing infrastructure or new infrastructure. So, and buildings. So, I think we really need to be sensitive to a changing workforce and a changing type of industry. And not necessarily, it's not necessarily that we don't allow it now, but we have to understand that some of our footprints and some of our older definitions of things might not be as seamless to kind of new types of technology that's coming out of Boston, coming out of Kendall Square, coming from Europe overseas just to be in the United States, and some of which that we really want to encourage. Burlington's been fantastic at really harnessing the medical device, robotics. I know iRobot moved up the street, but they were here for a long
Right.
time. And then with the expansion of Leahy, we're seeing more interest in medical device. And who knows with the merger with Beth Israel and Leahy, what's that going to mean for Burlington, and is there going to be more R&D? So anyway, it's kind of what we're looking at is what are the industries that are kind of multiplying, or the multiplier effect off what we have now. I mean, I'm sure you've spoke with Northeastern in the past. I mean, they're doing miraculous things up on their campus, and what their whole premise is, how do you bridge academics with commercial application? And so therefore, where are we going to be in the future, and what kind of space needs, and is it something we want in Burlington? I mean, we need to obviously balance kind of what we're looking for, but also we don't want to have empty office buildings because we weren't ready.
Right, absolutely. And maybe I was, trying to read into some of when you talked about some of the old rules or old systems that we have in place and what's coming in. Does that include things like taking a relook at how hazardous materials are classified, or what is allowed and what isn't? Because I know there's been some discussion about, these chemicals or these, byproducts of certain type of things are potentially dangerous, but with the way the technology is today, that those things are mitigated. Is that part of the discussion? Is kind of updating, kind of getting caught up to where technology is today?
Yes, part of the discussion. I mean, from a hazardous material and biologic perspective, the federal government, state government has so much oversight, as well as our Board of Health has tremendous staff in the board, and has regulations as well to oversee a lot of things containing hazardous materials. However, I mean, your average brand new gas station is probably going to have more of a risk than any of these
Sure.
types of new technologies moving forward. Just most of them. I mean, we're seeing a lot of technologies is where the unit that people are actually, the whole unit itself is totally contained. I mean, there's no exterior, there's no, it gets shipped to here, and you do the testing, and some place you don't even go into the place where you're manipulating different materials. So, but I wouldn't, I don't want to say that anything is that we're looking at is dangerous. I mean, we'd never.
No, I wasn't trying to imply that either. It was more just
as a safety or environmental concern. But yes, in terms of what people were doing in 85, 75 and 85 to what they're doing now is the world has changed.
Yes.
So I think it's important to recognize and just try to tell that story a little bit more. And I know the Board of Health we're lucky to have the Board of Health we have.
Yes, they seem very diligent in what they do. So you mentioned the life sciences amendment. Want to delve into that now, what it is, and kind of what the effect or the hoped for effect would be?
Sure. The amendment is kind of threefold. One, to advertise that we're open for life science, actually use the word life science. Try to integrate the existing biotechnology definitions that we already have that were passed back in 2012 into kind of life science. There's life science. Biotechnology is a piece of life science, but life science is not all biotechnology. And we've permitted companies, Millipore on the summit, as well as we just recently approved Sarepta in Network Drive, and we have some other biotechnology life science companies that are here now that are doing tremendous work in disease therapy, gene therapy, and other kind of unique individualized medicines. So what we really want to do is allow for, we have traditional laboratory. We got into the biotech labs, but that really didn't catch life science. So It was how do we want to be thinking about life science differently, and how do we want to be permitting it through the correct process? And that, going through, as I mentioned before, there's federal, state, Board of Health regulations, and then there's our process. So what the amendment is doing is it's introducing kind of definitions as well as use definitions, but most importantly, it's also identifying the fact that a laboratory space is typically doesn't generate the parking demand that a traditional office. And right now we don't have any other kind of calculator for parking except for the office. So if you have half your building is lab and half your building is office, you're still at a 2.5 parking ratio. So you're overbuilding parking. And that we never want to overbuild parking. We want to make sure we have enough, but not create more pavement that we need. So we introduced 1 per 1,000 parking requirement, which some argue might still be more than we need if really people have an office and then they come into the lab, but wanted to put something in there. And then also for the lab space, we allow for an increase in the floor area ratio to what we have now in IG, the general industrial and high-rise industrial districts, to a 0.25, so 25% of your total land area to building area. You can build up to 25% of that. What this amendment is seeking is to allow for the lab space to be a 0.25. The non-lab still has to respect the 0.5. The non-lab needs to still maintain the 0.25. We did analysis of everything in town. Burlington's roughly built out at a 0.41, almost 0.42 floor area ratio. So we wanted to make sure that there wasn't any concern that, we're allowing this FAR that's so high. But if you have this mixed-use building, you're going to average out to what the landscape looks like right now, to give people kind of comfort that you're not looking at a density that's not what's already on the ground for the most part. So. Okay,
it's a way of giving some leeway to businesses, but also maintaining green space and.
Right, but one of the most important things that we're definitely seeing in trends for 2019 and moving forward is, life science is exploding in the Boston area through Kendall Square, Boston, and there's only so much space.
Right.
And what you're also seeing is bigger companies from everywhere else coming and buying up those little companies. and we hope they want to stay here. There's a reason to stay here, to be close to the talent and be close to some of the research institutions. So, maybe they land in Burlington. Right now they're landing in Bedford, in Billerica, in Framingham, in Canton, and Norwood. Why are they landing in those locations? Why not Burlington? And we want to make sure that, it's the major industry coming out of Boston. We look at office is going kind of like this. Medical office is kind of leveling out, but with a little increase. But, life science lab is like on fire. And, do we want to have people building in Bedford, literally advertising our amenities, saying, it's so great, come here, we're so close to Burlington.
Right, so many great restaurants right
but
next
then they're
door.
just driving through Burlington, and we're not capturing that company. So we want to make sure that we're ready. I mean, I think we're going to see, it's happening now, but I think within 5 years you're going to see even more explosion of the industry into the suburbs. And second, California's competing and they have a strong sector there, but a lot of the European companies don't want to be all the way over, all the way across the country. So, there's these factors that are happening right now and this opportunity that I think if we can set ourselves up right, we are going to be in the era just as we had before of, when Sun Microsystems came here in the kind of the early to mid 90s, and we kind of, that whole decade was written because of those decisions to really focus on certain industry clusters by making sure, we weren't putting our eggs in one basket, but really making sure we were ready for what was coming before us. And the same thing, 2006 to 2008 with all the regulatory changes that we made, we were ready for the last decade.
Right.
And you have Third Ave built out in the district and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, what's next? What's the next chapter? And I think, there's industries that are right here that are looking for space, and if we're not ready, we're just going to miss it. Right. So we want to be
exciting stuff in the big picture of Burlington.
Yeah.
So I think that was a great, big, multi-year kind of look at kind of where the town is and how it's positioning itself. But I do want to drill down on a couple of the, smaller, or not necessarily smaller, but, the ones where people, the residents, viewers, were more likely to interact with. You touched on a couple of them, but so everybody knows, Sears is closed. What's the plan there? What are we going to see as they kind of continue this process?
So the repositioning of the Sears and the TBA, the Tire Battery Auto Center of Sears.
Sears Auto Center, I think everybody calls it.
So Sears is gone. Primark is staying. So Primark is still on the second floor of Sears. But what you're going to see is the internal corridor is going to be extended. And just like you're seeing on malls all over the place, that kind of inside, you're going to kind of turn it inside out, where there's some access from inside the mall. But really, you're kind of creating more of this open streetscape dynamic with a park along that edge, really wide sidewalks. You're going to see a mix of retail, restaurant in the old Sears site. And then in the Sears Auto Center, what the target that they were kind of looking for was, what's the lunch destination? What do you do, for a quick half an hour? So it's kind of fast casual. There might be like a little bit of like a yoga studio or so. I'm not, they're the only definite we know is that Kava is going to be moving into 85, and now it's 85 Middlesex Turnpike. But anyway, that. So you'll see that 35,000 square foot building everything's going to be on the outside. So just go around the building, and it's going to be that kind of fast casual fitness, half an hour lunch.
All right,
so more opportunity.
Less of a traditional mall, more the kind of what you said. What you see is open, kind of walk from place to place, outside, more landscaping.
If we can create the mall as a neighborhood feel, that's amazing. And it comes in pieces, of course, and with the Sears redevelopment, Long's coming in. Macy's isn't here yet, but they're aware of what's going on, and they're definitely thinking about it. We don't have any knowledge of what's going to be next, but we do know that Macy's feels that this is a strong site for them, and they're not looking to get rid of that site anytime soon, but we don't know what they're going to be looking for next. But just, I mean, what we would be pushing would be the same kind of how do we take the mall site that 10,000, 20,000 feet from looking out of an airplane window, like that's a mall, you know?
Yeah.
So
And make it more like,
and make
that's
it
a
look like a
small
neighborhood.
little neighborhood, you know, restaurant cluster.
Right. And then who knows, if we don't drive cars anymore, that's a whole different story. No,
We were getting too
we
far
won't
into
get
the
there yet.
Trying to focus more on 2019.
Yeah. So you'll see a lot of retail restaurant in the new Sears site.
And some of the other sites that of interest, like you said, Chili's is going to turn into, I'm blanking on the name.
The Art House.
The Art House. That will be something. Any other along that, you know, Middlesex area that we can expect changes or projects coming in?
Not big changes. Not like that.
I know there's some changes coming to Wayside. There's going to be a nice
There's
high-end Indian restaurant.
Indian restaurant taking over where the Bonefish Grill. The blanking on the name.
The name of the Indian place? Yeah, it's a fancy name. It's
Yes,
like,
but anyway, yes, an Indian restaurant.
you can look up on our archives. We have it on bcat.org/BNEWS.
I'll think of it right when we go off air.
Probably.
Let's see. The Building 19 site
Yes.
is the housing is almost ready to come online. The commercial section is unfortunately a victim, as there are some other developments we have in town, of the gas lockout.
Right.
Which has been terrible, just in terms of timing, because it took a long time to get the Mass DOT to approve the new signal and new sidewalk and the whole streetscape that's going to transform that hill. But in order to start the street work, they need to get the gas main moved. So
Right.
it's kind of a chicken and egg, and it's a real conundrum in terms of trying to figure out where that project and timeline of that project especially. But there was some news last night.
Oh yeah,
that
just today.
there was some negotiation or
They've come to
settlement, but
a tentative agreement, I think. So, you know, that's Wednesday the 3rd, you know, or Thursday the 3rd.
yeah. Well, let's
Possible.
hope, because
So,
then we're
yeah,
back
it's been
on.
a long process. And
But you know, Twist Bakery in Northwest Park, that was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be the you know, everything's nut free, everything, you know,
Yes.
no allergens. That, I mean, they've been held up because of the gas
yeah, so
lockout. So
hopefully the end of that is in sight.
yeah, it's not just us. Everybody's
yeah.
complaining about
It's all
it. so.
across the area. Last project, or last area I just want to touch on before we end with just the master plan is Crossroads. I know big changes have come over there. What you know, we've got the Target in, we've got the Total Wine. I know CVS is looking to move. Other things going on in that
So
place?
CVS is looking to move to the, it was Ethan Allen and then
Right.
Busa site. So they're adding a drive-through behind the building. In terms of other big changes at Crossroads, I mean, forever term from 20 years ago to now. I mean, we've been trying to figure out a way to better define the roadway to take a left into Crossroads, right in front of the Honda dealership. It's just not quite wide enough to have an easy 2 lanes. But that's not yet a project, but we keep talking about it and kept talking about it as Target moved in. Big news though, we're really far along in discussions with the Route 3 and 3A intersection, which is just over the line in Woburn. Which has been a huge issue for South Bedford Street as it backs up all the way past Blanchard, sometimes even to Wayside. But through beginning with Northeastern and some negotiated funds to help us get some plan work together, and having the city of Boston involved, the trustees now, it's just the moons aligned. The folks who needed to be at the table to have this discussion were at the table. So that has been enormous. And then we've been working with the city of Woburn. We've met with Mass DOT. They're on board, and we're moving forward with trying to seek some funding to get that intersection improved, to add
a left turn lane?
Add a dedicated right turn lane going south,
Okay.
which is one of the issues, and then left turn lanes both 2 left turn lanes on Cambridge Street, so you don't have that like no man's land, if anyone's familiar
Oh,
with it.
as someone who used to live in Woburn, that left-hand turn, like, you pass, you had Roche Brothers on your left, now Target, and then you're trying to make that left to get to Woburn. It backs up, and then it's difficult.
Yeah, and the signal is literally one of the oldest signals in the whole. I mean, it's like this. Like even when they put it up, it's just. But no, it's that's. I mean, those are some of the things that aren't that exciting that we do, but make a really big impact. I mean, it's just been one of those things that when Oracle expanded, they were like, "It's in Woburn. What are we going to do?" So between some projects that have happened along that corridor, we've been able to try to solve that problem, and my hope is 2019 and we'll get there, but it's been a good effort between a lot of parties.
Unfortunately, we're almost down to less than a minute. Just real quickly, where's the master plan?
Master plan will actually be completed in 2019. No, I know it's been unfortunately where we have permitting and planning, and permitting has timelines and Unfortunately, planning sometimes gets pushed a little bit and the timelines get pushed. We'd never like that to happen, but it has a little bit. But we are getting there. We have 2 more hearings with the planning board, and then we'll be revising for final draft, and then we're there. So, right. But it's been a tremendous ride, and it's been a great time. But it has been a long time, and it's ready to be done.
Well, I'm sure people will be excited to see it. And one quick note before we end, our crack staff here has informed us that the name of the Indian restaurant coming into Wayside is Devendra Patil, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So I know it's supposed to be fancy, high-end. They said the chef's been on like a journey across the world to come up with different recipes. So as a fan of that type of food, I'm excited about it.
Excellent.
Well, anyway, I want to thank you for coming in. A lot to think about, look forward to in 2019. I'm sure you guys will be busy as always, so I'll let you get out of the studio and get back to it.
Sure. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And there you have it, 2 perspectives of what we might expect in Burlington in 2019. Of course, there's always be a lot of unexpected things to happen, and we'll cover all of that here at BNEWS In Depth and BNEWS Weekly. I'd like to thank my guests this month, Town Accountant and Incoming Town Administrator Paul Sagarino and Planning Director Kristin Kassner. I'd also like to thank all of you for watching. I'm your host, BNEWS Director Rich Hosford, and we'll see you next month on BNEWS In Depth.